The deadline is tonight, the clock ticking down for Donald Trump if he were to comply with the January 6th committee subpoena to turn over evidence, documents that have been requested. That historic subpoena has made waves, but we don't know where that fight goes. We do know that other people who have defied the committee, some of them have faced severe consequences. Take Steve Bannon, convicted and sentenced to jail time for defying the same type of subpoena the former president got. And today we also saw indicted Trump aide Peter Navarro go back to court. He defied the committee as well. He has been indicted on the same grounds as Bannon, contempt of Congress, but he has not yet faced trial. Meanwhile, the testimony deadline for Trump is a little further out, 10 days from now, November 14th. And that's an interesting date because no one knows what will happen, but Axios is reporting aides or allies of Trump who say, and that doesn't mean it will happen, but they say Trump is looking at launching his 2024 campaign on that exact date. Trump faces 2 open and serious criminal probes at the federal level, plus the Georgia case. He might think that that announcement either shields him, or he might think that it's kind of a trolling move to say, oh, yeah, you guys were thinking about doing something the 14th? Here's what I'm doing. Meanwhile, there's new reporting in the New York Times, and this is really striking, that they are considering whether or not to indict Trump, meaning the Times is reporting that that decision has not been finalized at DOJ, and they're also considering what some could see as an escalation, creating a special counsel role to oversee any escalating Trump probe, especially as they weigh the difficulty of trying to deal with not only a former president, but a would-be presidential candidate. I'm joined now by New York Times Magazine legal writer Emily Bazelon, who's reported and written about many of these issues, and I've heard you actually know whether or not the DOJ will indict Trump. You just won't tell us. Do I have that right?
Exactly. I'm just going to withhold that information. No, I don't know.
Just hold it back. No, yeah. I'm only lightly joking about what could still be a very serious subject, which is no one knows. The Times story, with your colleagues on the news side go out of their way to say no one knows. I have a bone to pick with at least one of the leaks out of DOJ. But before I do that, as is our way on the beat, let's get your view on the facts and the story first on all this regarding the DOJ case.
I think that if the Justice Department is contemplating an indictment of former President Trump or people who are close to him, that a special counsel has to be on the table, right? I mean, especially if you have the political adversary of your boss running for office, and you're Merrick Garland, our Attorney General, it becomes very difficult to say you don't have some kind of conflict or appearance of a conflict if you try to prosecute that adversary or the people around him. And so I think not surprising.
Can I quibble?
Yeah.
Can I quibble with you on the logic?
Please.
The reporting is they're looking at it. The quibble would be, as you and I know, and I think many viewers know from following the exact same structure in the Mueller probe, that individual offers a layer. But as we know under the law, the decisions on the big enchilada, the indictment enchilada, which is, as you know, a common turn of phrase, will still be up to the Attorney General. So what does that layer really get you, Emily?
It doesn't get you total independence, right? We used to have a special counsel statute where the special counsel was overseen by a 3-court panel of judges and was more separate from the Justice Department. We don't have that anymore. However, once you've appointed a special counsel, you kind of set a train in motion. And Merrick Garland could say, I'm going to be hands off about this. John Durham, one of the special counsels appointed by President Trump's former attorney general, kept doing an investigation, and Merrick Garland let him alone. And those cases have generally fallen apart in court, but the attorney general did not become directly involved. So even though it is not actual independence, I think it helps present the appearance of independence. And in a situation like this, which is going to be so politically difficult if it actually arises, I think you want anything, even if it's a kind of incomplete shield.
You make a detailed and fair argument for that, which is why we were curious what you thought. Now to the real juice of whoever is leaking out of the DOJ says, and this is like Comey-esque we'll just start over, pretend it's 2016. Prosecutors at the DOJ tell the Times, some are concerned an indictment of Mr. Trump during the campaign could generate, quote, fierce criticism that could undercut the department's commitment to being seen as enforcing the law in a nonpartisan manner, end quote. As you know, and I think viewers remember, this is peak Comeyism. And I say it with all derision implied. When prosecutors who must just do their job and take the heat, which includes threats on their lives, start trying to game out how if they do something different, it will help how they are perceived, I think you could make a strong argument they are no longer prosecuting. If there's no case against Trump, obviously, then halt. No true bill, leave it alone. If there's a case, why are they leaking to the New York Times about worrying that pursuing an otherwise valid case could undermine their perception?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the problem is that there's a trap here. So let's say there is a case, right? A case that the Justice Department thinks meets the standard for an indictment. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll win a conviction, right? Because you have a higher burden of proof. You have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. You have to find a jury, all of those things. And we haven't done this in the United States before, indict and prosecute a former president. We know the political ramifications this will have for Trump and his supporters. It will become political dynamite. And so I think if you imagine there's a case, you could still imagine that the prosecutors are caught here between a rock and a hard place where they do damage to the rule of law if they don't bring the case for all the reasons you just laid out, but they also cause a kind of political earthquake if they do. And
should they be worried about their putative popularity, which they can only intuit by prediction? Because I don't think it worked out for James Comey or the FBI when he obsessed over that, which his own book admits.
They should not be worried about their popularity, but they should be worried about the stability of the country, right? And I'm not sure how that plays out. I mean, I think you could make a really strong case that the democracy and rule of law is served better by a very by-the-books approach to prosecution. If you have the case, you meet the standard for indictment, you go forward. But I understand why people in the Justice Department have reservations about this, given the political atmosphere in the country, given that, 30% of Americans seem really convinced that the election in 2020 was not fair. And we know that Trump will use this to rile up his supporters. So there are considerations on the other side, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Emily Bazelon, as measured a temperament as chamomile tea. And that's why we read and that's why we listen. Yeah. Hey, I'm Ari Melber. Thanks for watching The Beat. I wanted to let you know I'm writing a foreword to the January 6th committee's full report, which is coming out soon from HarperCollins. You can go pre-order the book right now, and it'll come to you first when the report comes out in the fall or whenever the government releases it. Just search Melber Jan 6th on Amazon or your favorite independent book site and click pre-order. You'll be the first to get both the report and my new piece on the coup conspiracy. You can also go to melberbook.com and order it there.